The plasma burn across Commander Jenna Reed's shield made her teeth rattle. 90 seconds into her first arena fight, and she was already regretting every life choice that had led to this moment. The 8-armed creature charging at her with biomechanical blades wasn't making her feel any better about the situation. 3 weeks ago, she'd been piloting routine patrols along the Kuiper Belt, watching for pirates and keeping Earth's outer colonies safe. Now she was fighting for her life in what looked like a twisted combination of Roman Colosseum and Alien Technology Expo, with a crowd of 80,000 beings screaming for blood. Not all of them had throats to scream with, but they managed anyway. The human specimen appears hesitant, boomed a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Perhaps we overestimated their species' capacity for combat. Jenna's jaw clenched. She hadn't survived 15 years in deep space patrol to be patronized by some multi-dimensional announcer. The alien warrior, a Carthaxian, according to the brief orientation she'd received, lunged forward with 4 of its blades while using its other arms to maintain perfect balance. She waited until the last possible moment before dropping and rolling. The arena floor hummed with energy beneath her, and she finally understood why her cellmate, a silicon-based life form named Rust, had insisted she memorize the pattern of power conduits running under the surface. The Carthaxian's blade struck the exact spot where she'd been standing, piercing the arena surface. Electricity arsed up through its weapons, sending it stumbling backward with a screech that made Jenna's translator implant Fritz out completely. "Well, that's interesting," she muttered, noting how the crowd's roar changed pitch. The betting boards floating above the arena flickered with rapidly changing odds. She just moved from 1,000 to 1 against survival to 500 to 1. Still terrible odds, but an improvement. The Carthaxian recovered quickly, its biomechanical components adapting to the electrical surge. It circled her more cautiously now, all 8 eyes focused on her movements. Jenna kept low, remembering her combat training. The standard-issue shield generator they'd given her was practically antique by arena standards, but it was similar enough to deep space patrol equipment that she could work with it. Magnificent recovery by the Carthaxian warrior. The announcer's voice resonated through the arena. The human's luck cannot last forever. Jenna smiled grimly. Luck had nothing to do with it. She'd spent her 3 weeks of captivity studying everything she could about the arena. The other prisoners thought she was crazy, asking endless questions about the technical specifications of the combat zone, the environmental controls, even the waste management systems. But 15 years of emergency repairs on deep space vessels had taught her that understanding systems was the key to survival. The Carthaxian charged again, this time splitting its attack pattern to come at her from multiple angles. Jenna waited until it committed to the attack, then slammed her shield generator against the floor. The device wasn't meant to be used that way, but she'd calculated that the power surge from the floor, combined with the shield's own energy matrix, would create a feedback loop. She was right. The resulting explosion of energy sent both her and the Carthaxian flying in opposite directions. The difference was, she'd been expecting it. She rolled with the blast, coming up in a defensive crouch. Her opponent crashed into one of the arena's energy barriers, its biomechanical components shorting out from the double exposure to power surges. The arena fell silent for a moment, then erupted in chaos. The betting boards were smoking, numbers spinning wildly as the quantum computers tried to calculate what had just happened. The Carthaxian lay motionless, its systems completely overloaded. Impossible. The announcer's voice held a note of genuine shock. The human has defeated Champion Vrix through technical manipulation. Jenna stood slowly, every muscle aching. She looked up at the private box where the arena masters watched, 7 crystalline beings whose bodies refracted light in ways that hurt her eyes. Their usual impassive demeanor had cracked, just slightly. They were leaning forward, studying her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. Winner by technical knockout, the announcement came slowly, as if the speakers themselves were confused. The human, Jenna Reed. As medical drones rushed to attend to the fallen Carthaxian, Jenna caught glimpses of the crowd's reactions. Some were celebrating wildly, having won impossible odds. Others were silent, their multiple appendages or sensory organs focused entirely on her. But it was the quiet conversations happening in the private boxes that interested her most. The wealthy elite of a dozen species were already discussing this unexpected development. Back in her cell that night, nursing her bruises with a regenerative patch, Jenna received an unexpected visitor. The maintenance drone that cleaned their block stopped at her door, its optical sensors glowing softly. Interesting strategy. It hummed in perfectly accented English. Most new fighters try to overpower their opponents. You chose to understand the arena itself. Jenna shrugged, trying to hide her surprise at the drone's apparent intelligence. Understanding systems keeps you alive in deep space. Why should this be any different? The drone's sensors flickered in what might have been amusement. Indeed, the arena masters are discussing you. Your victory has disrupted certain patterns. Some find this concerning. Others, interesting. And which are you? Jenna asked carefully. I am merely a maintenance drone, it replied, resuming its cleaning duties. But I have observed that systems which cannot adapt to unexpected variables tend to fail. Perhaps you would be interested in accessing the arena's technical archives. For purely educational purposes, of course. As the drone moved away, Jenna lay back on her bunk, mind racing. She'd survived her first fight, but this was just the beginning. The arena masters hadn't just captured a soldier, they'd captured an engineer who specialized in keeping complex systems running under impossible conditions. And if there was one thing engineers were good at, it was finding ways to make systems work better. Or in this case, perhaps, finding ways to make them fail spectacularly. The crowd's chants still echoed in her head, but now they seemed less like a death sentence and more like a challenge. They wanted a show. Fine. She'd give them a show they'd never forget. But first, she had some studying to do. The maintenance drone's archives turned out to be a goldmine of information, though not in the way most fighters would have appreciated. While others studied combat footage, Jenna spent her nights poring over environmental control schematics and power distribution networks. The arena masters had built something remarkable, and remarkably vulnerable, if you knew where to look. Your next opponent is a Nexian swarm mind, announced Crix, her new cellmate, a being composed entirely of living crystal. They fight as one entity, sharing consciousness across hundreds of drone bodies. No one has beaten them in 17 cycles. Jenna barely looked up from the holographic blueprint she was studying. How do they coordinate? Some kind of quantum entanglement. You ask the strangest questions, human, Crix chimed, their crystalline form resonating with amusement. Most fighters want to know about combat patterns, weak points, preferred attack strategies. Those too, Jenna admitted, but understanding how something works is half the battle. Her second match proved her point. When the Nexian swarm descended upon her in a tornado of synchronized drone bodies, Jenna was ready. She'd modified her shield generator again, this time to emit a specific frequency that disrupted quantum field coherence. The swarm's perfect coordination fractured, drone bodies colliding with each other in confusion. The crowd went wild. The betting systems crashed completely this time, unable to compute the odds of her victory. But it was the reactions in the private boxes that interested Jenna most. Through the borrowed optical enhancer she traded 3 meals for, she could see the arena masters engaged in what appeared to be an argument. They fear you, the maintenance drone told her during its next visit. Not for your combat prowess, but for your understanding. Knowledge is not meant to flow upward in their system. Jenna's third match was against a chronoshifter, a being that could manipulate local time fields. They gave her substandard equipment this time, obviously hoping to handicap her. She still won, using the arena's own temporal stabilizers to trap her opponent in a feedback loop of their own making. Her fourth match introduced a new element: teamwork. They paired her with a massive, silicon-based fighter named Grax against two Void Hunters. During the pre-fight preparation, Grax regarded her with multiple crystalline eyes. "They say you understand systems," Grax rumbled in a voice like grinding mountains. "Perhaps we can reach an arrangement." The fight that followed was unlike anything the arena had seen. Jenna's technical knowledge combined with Grax's raw power created strategies that left the spectators buzzing for days. They didn't just win. They put on a show that had every species in attendance talking about the possibilities of cross-species cooperation. That wasn't what the arena masters wanted at all. "You're disrupting the natural order," her original cellmate, Rust, warned her after that match. "The arena isn't just about combat. It's about maintaining hierarchies, about keeping species separate and controlled." "Then maybe it's time for a change," Jenna replied, working on her latest equipment modification. She'd started teaching Grax basic engineering principles, and in return, they taught her about crystalline communication networks. "Why do you think they really captured me, Rust? What are they studying?" Rust's silicon form shifted uncomfortably. "There are rumors about why they take champions from newly discovered species, about what happens to those who survive long enough to learn too much." Jenna's next few matches became increasingly difficult. The arena masters paired her against opponents specifically chosen to counter her known strategies. But each fight taught her something new, about the arena's systems, about the other species, about the complex web of politics and power that kept everything in place. She started building a network of her own. Grax introduced her to other silicon-based fighters who could access and transmit data through crystalline structures. A quantum-shifted being named Vex taught her about probability manipulation in exchange for her insights into system vulnerabilities. Even some of the betting syndicates began quietly reaching out, intrigued by her ability to consistently defy odds. The maintenance drone continued to be her most valuable ally, providing access to restricted data and carrying messages between fighters. Through it, Jenna learned about previous champions who had disappeared after learning too much, about genetic sampling programs disguised as medical treatments, about the arena master's true purpose in studying different species. "They're not just running a gladiatorial arena," Jenna realized one night, piecing together fragments of information. "They're conducting the galaxy's largest experimental research program. Combat capabilities, problem-solving approaches, adaptation strategies. They're building a database of every species' strengths and weaknesses. And now they have humanities," Rust observed. "A species that can understand and manipulate complex systems, that adapts technologies in unexpected ways, that forms alliances across biological barriers. Do you see why they fear you?" Jenna's reputation grew beyond her victories. Other fighters began seeking her out, not just for technical advice, but for strategies on survival. She taught them to understand the systems they fought in, while they taught her about their species' unique capabilities. Each exchange of knowledge strengthened her network and deepened her understanding of what they were really fighting against. The arena masters responded by increasing security, implementing new restrictions, and scheduling more dangerous matches. But they didn't realize that every new measure they took revealed more about their own systems and priorities. Jenna and her allies studied it all, building their own database of knowledge. "The problem with running experiments," Jenna told Grax during one of their training sessions, "is that sometimes your subjects start experimenting back." As she prepared for her next match, watching the betting boards flash with impossible odds and probability calculations, Jenna smiled. The arena masters thought they were studying humanity through her. They hadn't realized that humanity, through her, was studying them right back. And soon, very soon, they would learn just how dangerous that knowledge could be. The first clue came from the medical bay. After a particularly brutal match against a quantum-phased opponent, Jenna noticed something odd about the regeneration chamber they'd placed her in. The neural interface wasn't just healing her injuries, it was scanning her brain patterns, mapping her decision-making processes. "They do it to all the champions," whispered Zix, a telepathic healer who'd risked everything to share this information. But humans, your neural patterns fascinate them. Your ability to create novel solutions, to see connections where none should exist. Jenna thought back to all her routine medical treatments over the past months. Each scan, each tissue sample, each seemingly standard procedure, all of it feeding into some larger purpose. But why? The answer came during her next match, against a being that shouldn't have existed. The synthesized one, they called it. A creature that displayed abilities from multiple species. As Jenna dodged its attacks, she recognized familiar patterns. Crystalline defense structures like Grax's, temporal manipulation like the chronoshifter, even neural interference attempts like Zix's species. They weren't just studying champions, they were building something. The genetic samples, she confronted the maintenance drone that night. They're not just for research, are they? They're creating hybrid warriors. The drone's sensors flickered in what she'd come to recognize as concern. The arena masters believe in optimization. Every species has strengths, weaknesses. They seek to eliminate variables. The implications hit her like a quantum surge, a warrior species combining the best traits of every fighting race in the galaxy. An army loyal to the arena masters alone. And now they had human adaptability and innovation to add to their template. But that wasn't even the worst part. Deep in the restricted archives, hidden behind layers of quantum encryption, Jenna found coordinates, star maps, military assessments. The arena masters weren't just creating weapons, they were planning invasions, starting with the younger, more vulnerable spacefaring races, starting with Earth. We've seen it before. Grax rumbled when she shared her discovery with her most trusted allies. They find a promising species, study them through the arena, then strike when they understand all weaknesses. Many of our homeworlds fell this way. Not this time, Jenna declared, her mind already racing with possibilities. They think they're studying us, cataloging our capabilities, but everything they've learned about humans has been under arena conditions, controlled, predictable. She laughed, a sound that made even the crystalline beings vibrate with unease. They have no idea what humans are really capable of when we work together, when we're fighting for something bigger than ourselves. The next phase of matches brought new challenges. The arena masters, perhaps sensing something was amiss, began pairing champions against their own kind, species versus species, forcing them to reveal racial weaknesses and strengths. They expected betrayal, infighting, the breakdown of the fragile alliances Jenna had built. Instead, she turned their own system against them. Each match became a carefully choreographed exchange of information. Fighters shared weaknesses voluntarily, taught each other countermeasures, used the very public spectacle of combat to demonstrate unity rather than division. The betting systems went haywire trying to calculate odds when opponents seemed to be cooperating even as they fought. The humans have corrupted the natural order, she overheard one arena master telling another. Their influence spreads like a virus through our perfect system. Perfect. That was their weakness. The arena masters believed in optimization, in control, in predictable outcomes. They couldn't comprehend a species that thrived on chaos, that turned limitations into advantages, that saw rules as suggestions and barriers as challenges. Through her network, Jenna began gathering proof of their true agenda. Grax's crystalline data storage preserved genetic records. Zix's telepathic abilities captured memories of disappeared champions. The quantum-shifted beings calculated probability maps showing the inevitable pattern of invasion. But proof wasn't enough. They needed a way to expose everything, to show not just the other champions, but the entire galactic community what was really happening in the arena. The arena masters' power came from their reputation as fair arbiters, as protectors of galactic law. If that facade cracked, they'll try to stop us, Rust warned. They've built this system over millennia. They won't let it fall to one human and a collection of rebellious champions. Jenna smiled, checking the modifications on her latest piece of approved equipment. They'll try. But you know what humans are really good at, besides adapting and innovating. She held up the device, its circuits pulsing with power that definitely wasn't in the original specifications. We're really, really good at breaking things, especially things that need to be broken. As she prepared for her next match, watching the crowd roar and the betting boards flash, Jenna felt the weight of everything they'd discovered. The arena masters thought they were preparing to conquer humanity. Instead, they'd given humanity's representative time to study them, to understand their systems, to build alliances across the galaxy. They'd created their own worst nightmare, a human engineer with nothing to lose, a catalog of their weaknesses, and an army of champions ready to fight for something bigger than arena glory. The revolution wouldn't be quick, and it wouldn't be easy. But as Jenna stepped into the arena, her modified equipment humming with potential, she smiled. The real game was just beginning, and she was done playing by their rules. The hardest part wasn't finding allies. It was making sure the arena masters didn't realize how many they had. Jenna turned the arena's own bureaucracy into a weapon, using official training sessions as cover for strategy meetings, medical treatments as opportunities to share intelligence. Every system has redundancies, she explained to a gathered group of champions, their voices masked by the hum of training equipment. Backup plans for their backup plans. We need to hit them all at once, or they'll simply reroute power and control through secondary channels. The resistance grew in the shadows of the arena's grandeur. Silicon-based fighters like Grax formed living communication networks, passing messages through crystalline resonance patterns that the arena masters' monitoring systems couldn't detect. Quantum-shifted beings calculated safe zones where probability fields made surveillance impossible. Even the maintenance drones, long overlooked by their masters, became crucial intelligence gatherers. But their greatest weapon was the arena itself. "Watch this," Jenna told her latest opponent, a plasma-based entity named Helrix, during what appeared to be a vicious battle. As they exchanged blows, she demonstrated how to identify power conduit patterns beneath the arena floor. Hit these points in sequence, and you can create a feedback loop in their control systems. Each match became a lesson, each defeat or victory, a chance to spread knowledge. Champions who lost were sent to medical bays, where telepathic healers like Zix waited to gather and share information. Winners earned access to training facilities where crystalline data networks hummed with encrypted plans. The arena masters noticed something was changing, but their own system worked against them. They designed everything around collection and analysis of combat data. They had no metrics for measuring the spread of hope, the growth of unity, the building of trust across species barriers. They've increased genetic sampling, Rust reported during one clandestine meeting. A hybrid warrior program is accelerating. We're running out of time. Jenna nodded, making final adjustments to a piece of equipment that looked standard issue but contained enough modified components to make an arena safety inspector faint. Then we moved to Phase 2. Start spreading the word about the coordinates they're gathering, the invasion plans. But carefully. We need allies in the audience as much as in the arena. The betting syndicates were the first to notice patterns that had nothing to do with combat odds. Ships moving near vulnerable systems, resources being stockpiled, military assessments being updated too frequently. The wealthy elite of the galaxy might not care about gladiatorial slaves, but they cared very much about threats to their investments. Meanwhile, Jenna's reputation grew beyond just winning fights. Other champions began emulating her methods, not just her combat techniques, but her approach to understanding and manipulating arena systems. The arena masters couldn't stop it without admitting they'd lost control of their own creation. "Your influence spreads like a virus," one arena master told her during a mandatory review session, their crystalline form refracting light in patterns that suggested barely controlled rage. Perhaps we underestimated humanity's potential for disruption. Perhaps, Jenna agreed pleasantly. You underestimated a lot of things. The next phase was the riskiest. They needed to get proof of the hybrid warrior program to the outside world. The arena masters kept their most damning secrets in quantum-locked vaults, protected by security systems that would detect any unauthorized access. So they didn't try to break in. Instead, they'd brought the evidence out piece by piece, hidden in plain sight. Modified equipment became data storage devices. Medical waste contained genetic samples proving unauthorized experimentation. Even the arena's own broadcast system was repurposed, carrying encrypted messages hidden in combat footage static. The arena masters believe in perfection, Jenna told her growing network of allies. In control, in systems that can't be broken. But they forgot something fundamental about the universe. He held up a small device, seemingly innocuous but containing enough evidence to shatter the arena master's reputation forever. Entropy isn't just a law of physics. It's a promise. Everything breaks eventually. Systems, rules, empires. Our job is just to help things along. As she prepared for what would become her most important match yet, Jenna felt the weight of all their planning, all their preparation, all their hopes. The arena masters thought they were watching a champion prepare for combat. They didn't realize they were watching a revolution prepare for launch. The real question wasn't whether their plan would work. It was whether the galaxy was ready for what would happen when it did. Because one thing was certain. After this, nothing in the arena would ever be the same again. The day of reckoning began like any other in the arena. 80,000 spectators. Quantum betting boards flashing with impossible odds. Arena masters watching from their crystalline boxes, still believing they controlled every aspect of their perfect system. They had no idea that every fighter in today's matches carried modified equipment, that every maintenance drone had been reprogrammed, that even the arena's famous environmental controls had been subtly altered over months of careful preparation. The human champion Jenna Reed will now face the arena master's latest creation. The announcement boomed through space-warping speakers. The evolution of combat itself. Their opponent was everything they'd feared. A hybrid warrior combining the strongest traits of a dozen species. Crystalline armor, quantum-shifted reactions, temporal manipulation fields, even crude attempts at human adaptability. The arena master's ultimate weapon, meant to demonstrate their power over all species. Instead, it would prove their undoing. The fight began spectacularly, hybrid warrior versus human champion. But this wasn't just combat, it was a signal. As Jenna engaged her opponent, resistance members throughout the arena activated their modified equipment. Each device seemed to malfunction in a unique way, creating what appeared to be random system failures. But there was nothing random about it. The arena's environmental controls began cycling through settings, each shift revealing hidden data on the screens above. Medical bays activated emergency protocols, broadcasting genetic research data to every betting syndicate in attendance. Even the quantum-locked vaults protecting the arena master's most damaging secrets began to degrade, their contents streaming directly into the arena's public broadcast system. "What have you done?" the hybrid warrior demanded, its voice a disturbing mixture of different species' speech patterns. The creature was powerful, but its very existence was now damning evidence of the arena master's true agenda. "We're not just fighting you," Jenna replied, dodging a quantum-phased attack. "We're fighting the system that created you, the one that thinks it can control and optimize everything. That treats entire species as resources to be harvested and combined." Above them, chaos erupted in the private boxes as wealthy spectators realized the true scope of the arena master's plans. Invasion coordinates, military assessments, genetic manipulation programs, evidence of disappeared champions and conquered worlds, all of it now public, undeniable, broadcast across every communication channel in the arena. The arena masters tried to shut down the systems, but that only triggered the next phase. Every fighter in the arena activated their modified equipment simultaneously, creating a cascading power surge that overloaded the control networks. Emergency barriers failed. Environmental systems went haywire. The perfect controlled arena descended into magnificent chaos. And through it all, Jenna continued her fight with the hybrid warrior, each exchange now a public demonstration of everything the arena masters had tried to hide. Every ability the creature displayed was matched with broadcast data, showing which champion it had been stolen from, which species had been exploited. "You think you can defeat us?" The hybrid warrior snarled, its form shifting between different combat modes. "We are the pinnacle of evolution." "No," Jenna countered, her modified shield generator creating patterns that interfered with the creature's quantum fields. "You're proof that they don't understand evolution at all. Real evolution isn't about control or optimization. It's about adaptation, change, freedom to become something new." The final phase of their plan activated. Throughout the arena, champions began working together openly, using their combined abilities to protect spectators from the failing environmental systems. Species that the arena masters had tried to pit against each other now demonstrated unity and cooperation in crisis. The hybrid warrior faltered, its programmed responses unable to adapt to the rapidly changing situation. In that moment of hesitation, Jenna struck, not to destroy, but to free. Her modified equipment interfaced with the creature's control systems, giving it something the arena masters had never intended: choice. The arena's main screens flickered, then stabilized, now showing a single massive display. Proof of the arena masters' planned invasion of Earth, along with evidence of similar attacks on other worlds. The wealthy elite who had funded the arena for so long now saw exactly what they had been supporting. The arena was never about entertainment or justice. Jenna's voice carried through the chaos. It was about control, about studying species to exploit them, about building weapons and planning conquests. But they made one crucial mistake. She looked up at the arena master's private box, where crystalline forms shifted in patterns of pure rage. They thought they could control evolution itself. Instead, they created something they never expected: unity, understanding, a resistance that crosses all species barriers. The hybrid warrior stood down, its programming broken, now free to choose its own path. Throughout the arena, champions and spectators alike joined together, their combined voices drowning out the arena master's attempts to restore order. In the end, it wasn't just Jenna or the resistance that broke the arena master's power, it was the truth. The truth about their experiments, their plans, their manipulation of entire species. The truth that they had tried so hard to control, optimize, and contain. As galactic security forces finally arrived, responding to the mass of evidence now public across every communication channel, Jenna looked around at what they had achieved. Champions from different species helping each other, former opponents working together. Even the maintenance drones were openly assisting in evacuation efforts. "What happens now?" asked the hybrid warrior, its voice uncertain, but now truly its own. Jenna smiled, watching as the arena masters were taken into custody. Now we do what humans do best. We adapt. We rebuild. We create something better from the ruins of what was broken. The arena would never host another forced combat, but it didn't fade into history. Instead, it became something new, a center for cross-species cooperation and exchange, a place where different races could learn from each other openly, where strength meant more than just combat ability. And in the end, that was humanity's greatest victory, not just surviving the arena of death, but transforming it into something that gave life to a new future for all species.